The Other London Show.
The River Thames is often romanticised in song, films, books, and even on, glossy Instagram pictures. But in reality, it stinks, okay? It's filthy and it stinks. That's my review anyway. Stretching about 215 miles, it's the United Kingdom's second largest river. And because the settlement built around it around 2,000 years ago went on to become one of the busiest cities on Earth, it naturally became a watery grave for artefacts from pretty much every civilization to call London its home. And I'm not talking about the odd discarded carrier bag you see floating around. No, I'm talking about unexploded World War II bombs, body parts, weird animals, and things that absolutely should not be there, and things that we didn't know were there until quite recently. In fact, many of these things on the list have been found in the last few years. So let's see what's really lurking beneath the surface of the Thames, shall we?
Meet the mudlarks.
While occasionally some random artifact or gory evidence of a horrific crime will wash up on the banks of the Thames unannounced and uninvited, most of the weird and wonderful historical items laying on the Thames have been found and pulled up by mudlarks. Mudlarking went mainstream in the 19th century when people, mostly those living in terrible Dickensian-like poverty, would search the banks of the Thames River to find anything of value, such as rope, lost coins, jewellery, and even items of clothing that could either be used or sold on. Thankfully, today's mudlarks are just doing it for the love of the game, and in fact, they even have to pay the city to be able to do it, so, the thing's reversed there. You can even read best-selling books written by mudlarkers. So let's have a look at some of the weird things they found down there, shall we?
Oi! No bombing in the river!
Back in 2018, the good people at London City Airport had a bit of a problem on their hands when 16,000 passengers were unable to board their flights, which left them all a bit miffed. I know what you're thinking. No doubt it was some kind of strike, or maybe it was too windy to take off or something. But no, the reason for the disruption was the discovery of an undetonated bomb, something that even the most frustrated passenger could probably understand would delay a flight. Sure, it's pretty weird to find a bomb under an airport, but actually this gets weirder. This 500-kilogram bomb had just been sitting there since either 1940 or 1941, when it was dropped by the German Luftwaffe during the Blitz. Oh, the Luftwaffe! Ugh. Now, you could be forgiven for believing that digging up an unexploded World War II bomb from the banks of the Thames would be a rare occurrence. Maybe you could even go so far as to say a once-in-a-lifetime event. And because I find your naivete both charming and endearing, I'm willing to let you off this time. According to Matt Bronson, a historian at the Imperial War Museum, the Luftwaffe dropped about 24,000 tons of high explosives on London in 85 major raids during the war. And because clearly not all of them exploded, we simply don't know where they are. Where are the bombs? I don't know. Nobody knows. And according to the BBC, it's believed that thousands of unexploded World War II bombs remain buried in London, with some estimates suggesting 10% of the bombs dropped on the UK failed to detonate. So yay, that's terrifying. Now, there's actually been enough 80-year-old but still very active bombs found buried in and around London over the past few years. In fact, there's so many I could probably do a video completely dedicated to that, so let me know in the comments if you want to see it. But let's get back to this. After the bomb was discovered lying in a bed of silt about 15 meters under the water of the Thames, police were quick to evacuate the area and shut down rail travel. But what to do with the bomb? Well, the British Army got involved, as of course they did, and they floated the 1.5 meter long device down the river and attached some high-grade military bombs to it. And after what the lieutenant commander said was a very long night, they exploded the bomb deep under the water.
Giddy up, horsey.
I know what you're thinking. So what? They found some horse bones in the Thames. Who cares? They've been using horses for like thousands of years in London, until quite recently actually. You can't impress me? Well, you've got some attitude, mister. Because the types of horses I'm talking about are seahorses. Yeah, didn't expect that, did you? 2 species of seahorses were found in Greenwich and near the South Bank recently. This is quite weird because seahorses don't really travel that far. They're like a typical millennial. They don't like commuting. So we have to ask ourselves, how did they get to the Thames and how long have they been there? Well, surprisingly, they've known seahorses have been in the Thames for a while. They just didn't know how many were there. Within the space of 2 months, there were 6 sightings of seahorses in the River Thames, spanning from Greenwich all the way up to the Globe Theatre. Sure, the United Kingdom actually has 2 species of native seahorses. There's the long-snouted seahorse and the short-snouted seahorse, but there's no medium-snouted seahorse. Anyway, finding many seahorses in the Thames, especially that bit that runs right through the centre of London, I mean, you can't get more central than the Globe Theatre, is kind of a big deal. The river was deemed biologically dead in the 1950s. A biologically dead river basically means a river that's too polluted to support its natural aquatic life. And because seahorses are known to be sticklers for clean water, they love a clean environment, this suggests that the Thames is actually cleaner than we thought. It's a kind of up-and-coming neighbourhood in the water community. They've cleaned the place up. It still stinks, but they've cleaned it up. And along with seahorses, they found sightings of sharks, seals, and all kinds of crazy things.
Aye, aye.
Do you ever have that strange feeling that you're being watched? You try to shake it off, but the nagging feeling just persists until you can't get the thing out of your head. Then, terrifyingly, you look down and you see that your gut feeling was correct all along. You were being watched by a human with a human eye. Well, kind of. When famous mudlark Lara Malcolm was doing her thing, mudlarking around, if you will, she looked down to see a perfectly preserved glass eye staring back at her from the mud. Made in the 1930s, the eye was designed to look as realistic as possible, so it was bespoke, you know, to match the original eye colour of the wearer. And I'm telling you, these manufacturers put a lot of work into their eyes, even going as far as to dip individual hairs into red paint to make the appearance of veins in the white of the eyes. And there's actually probably a load more glass eyes in the Thames, because in the 1930s, when glass eye production shifted to the UK, around 4,000 was sent from London to the poor people whose eyes were damaged in World War I. So although I'm not surprised about the eye thing, I'm more curious about how somebody would go about losing a glass eye. Is it something that you would clean on your evening walk or something? I don't know. How did it end up there? Did somebody miss it? Somebody must have been looking for that. But yeah, it was found in the Thames.
Oh, you'll have a whale of a time.
Seahorses aren't the only weird animals that have been spotted frolicking in the Thames. Back in January 2006, a 15-metre long 12-ton whale was spotted swimming up the river in central London. Nicknamed Willie by the locals, she was the first whale to be spotted in the Thames since records began in 1913. Thought to have been lost from her natural habitat off the coasts of northern Scotland or Ireland, Willie was first spotted making her way through the Thames Barrier. Now, this sight was literally unbelievable. In fact, a commuter making his way to work on the train at 8:30 in the morning saw this and actually thought he was hallucinating. So much so that he called the emergency services for medical help. But as the day went on, more and more people reported seeing Willie, and her image was eventually caught by a TV camera. Unfortunately, it became clear that the whale was in a bit of trouble. You see, whales are used to swimming in waters about 700 metres deep, and the part of the Thames where she was now swimming in was only about 5 metres deep. So it wasn't long until concerned members of the public began trying to encourage her to swim away and help her go through this ordeal. A day after the original sighting, she was spotted by the British Divers Marine Life Rescue, who attempted to assist Willie and with the hope of getting her back into deep water. Unfortunately, at this point, it was clear that she was struggling to fight against the tidal water, and it was making her exhausted. She was even lifted onto a barge near the Albert Bridge. The plan was to transport her out to Kent. And although the scene aroused a huge crowd of onlookers, they were more concerned than entertained at this point. By now, Willie was very weak, and Unfortunately, the poor girl had been through too much, and she passed away at 8 minutes past 7 in the evening on the 21st of January 2006. But of course, now they had to think about what to do with the remains. The Sun newspaper attempted to raise about £10,000 that was necessary for the recovery of a whale skeleton. But ultimately, and in my view rightfully, Willie's bones were given to the Natural History Museum. In January 2007, the skeleton went on public display at the Guardian and Observer Archive Visitor Centre.
When in Rome, or Walthamstow.
If you saw a newspaper headline that said, "Man found cup in the Thames," you would probably think, who cares? I don't care. Why are you telling me about this? Okay? I mean, just think of the amount of pint glasses and wine bottles that have been tossed overboard by some drunk banker over the decades of booze cruises they've had on that river. But there's a twist. This container that was found was almost 2,000 years old. And weirder than that, it was in mint condition. Yeah. In 2023, mudlark Malcolm Russell from Walthamstow was doing his things on the bank of the Thames, larking around, when he saw something sticking out of the mud. So while pulling it out of the mud, he expected it to be, like a big chunk of pottery, maybe something from the early 20th century, or if he was lucky, maybe part of a Victorian plate or something. It's still a good find, but But he kept pulling and pulling and pulling until he realized he was holding an extremely rare Roman cup. Now, this is really weird, actually, because the Thames is a tidal river in a country that's famous for very rainy and windy weather. So literally every day, things that are in the Thames are constantly being slapped against the bank, moving back and forth. And sure, it was missing one handle, but it hadn't been smashed to smithereens in all that time. After finding the artifact, he did what most of us do. He went on social media to share what he had been up to that day. The tweet caught the attention of the Museum of London, who wanted to have a look at it. Now, weirdly enough, they found that the vessel was actually a copy of a Roman cup. But this isn't an anticlimax, although it was a cheap version of like a nice thing you would buy while decorating your first apartment. Even this copy of the original was likely made along the River Rhine in the 2nd century. So I've got to say, not bad for a cheap knockoff, is it? So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and by the way, this list is just a tiny percentage of the things that they found in the Thames, because every day the tide can bring something new. So let me know in the comments if you want me to do another one, and I'll fish some more things out. Eh? Yeah. Anyway, if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I shall see you next week. Goodbye.